So I can actually give a real example. We posted a PR internship about a year and a half ago, and we had 500 applications, which, as I'm seeing some jobs opening, yes, it was a massive amount of interest, and we were really excited by it. But what I can tell you, the experience from the hiring side, what happens is people apply through LinkedIn, they apply through our website, and then the recruiter sends me a zip file with PDFs of all the applications. And I open it up and it's literally a zip folder with 500 PDFs. So if you can think about, when you're trying to skim through these, something that's visually appealing, really simple, really eye-catching will make you click and stay. And then you start to scroll. And I think the first thing that we really looked for was some kind of statement that talked about your career aspirations. You wanted to work in communications, a little just about you, and also making sure that you, in fact, want a job in communications, because you would be shocked at the fact that probably half of the 500 weren't even applying for my internship. They were sending their resume for any open positions within the company. So there's very much a scan and move on mentality. So that scanning, you need to make it really easy that in that top half of the first page, I know you work in communications, or I know that you're taking communications as a course, as a degree or a diploma. And that you're actually seeking a career, because then you continue down. If you realize very quickly that that's not the case, then you move on. And then I think, looking for any kind of experience that you can link back to communications or PR. So it could be volunteering and things that a volunteering opportunity that you participated in, and the things that you learned or the things that you did that were communication skills that you could bring forward into a role, and really just helping the reader quickly understand who you are and what you've done. A lot of people get really worried about the fact that they don't have work experience in PR. And I think showing things that you've done in school, different volunteering committees and things like that you've participated in. Again, anything that shows that you're eager to learn, that you've found ways that are creative to get some experience, get your hands on, and really try to understand the field helps a lot. I would also say finding ways to break through are really important. And I had someone who applied and then sent me a message through LinkedIn only saying, I wanted to introduce myself. I applied for this position. I really hope that you'll consider my resume and potentially meet with me. And I actually saw it after I had gone through the pile. So I went back into the pile, and it was someone that I had already pulled out. But I think they got a bit of a gold star in my mind that they had reached out. But I would say there's a fine balance between would love to meet with you versus give me updates. I want to know if I can have an interview, and getting really pushy, because I think you start to get a lot of those from different places. And it's clearly people who are super keen, but there's definitely a delicate balance between trying to stand out and trying to take more time than what you really deserve at that point in the process.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious to know if people do Etsy templates or Canva templates for their resume, is that read by like ATS systems? Like, does PepsiCo even use that?
They literally handed me a folder of PDF.
Oh, okay.
It may vary, but depending on the company, but no. And I would say if you're in a company, I have a team of 6, but I wouldn't say that our recruiters necessarily know what they're looking for comms people. So in the past, I've had them go through it and make recommendations. And then I've gone in after and pulled out completely different people than what they've pulled out, because I'm looking for different things. For me, it's can you write and can you think? So I think it would be, I'm sure there's companies that do, and maybe Ivana and Joanne.
Yeah, ours is a little different, but I like the way you've talked about your experience, Sheri.
Mm-hmm.
Could I jump in?
Yeah,
Arvind?
absolutely.
So we would have a very similar experience if I put a junior position out there on our internet. I would get probably 500 to 1,000 resumes. So it's a little different where we do have a pre-screening process. So we have a portal for all jobs, and what happens is you would be filtered through, and then similar to Sheri, we would go through a bit of the questionnaire and assessment and look for some of those keywords, key experiences. I'm in the public sector, so we serve government. So some of the things I would be looking for are just, how well you know the community, because I'm always looking for people who are just have some experience in the community, understand what it is to serve or volunteer or work in the community. I think that's a really nice plus. And then I really believe, like Sheri, sometimes it does help if you can connect yourself to somebody or something that has happened in Mississauga. That really makes you stand out, because when you've got 500 or 200, even if you whittle that down to, Sheri, sometimes I get down to 80. That's still a lot to go through, right? So you really have to be able to stand out. And I think the other thing is, if I could just add, apply to jobs that you don't think are necessarily true PR, especially in government. It's just really important to say, if you really want to work in this sector, that to get a flavor of what that looks like. And then we're such a large organization that if it's not your first job, it might be your second job or your third job. So just some feedback in that regard.
That's fair.
I love that one. I applied for a summer job in university, and it was called Export Marketing Assistant with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food. And it sounded like a marketing role. It was a complete PR job. So it was a fluke, because I didn't really know what I was getting into, but I 100% agree with that.
So I just usually, sorry, Joanne, go in. I was just going to ask, like, when you say linking it to community, like that specifically would be in like the cover letter, like the first paragraph, right?
Just like Sheri, you would say, you know what? I volunteered with the Pork Credit Business Association for a number of years, or I've been a volunteer, or, my first job was as a swimming instructor in a pool. So, you've got some idea, at least some connection. I think for us, that's important, because I know you're going to bring the PR skills. So you have to really differentiate yourselves from others. So I think that's really important from my perspective.
Okay, got it. And Joanne, you were saying?
Yeah, if I could just add to Sheri and Ivana's points, they're right, like on point for sure. You literally have 7.4 seconds to show off who you are, because that's how quickly we scan resumes. If it may even be less, but that's on average. So you want to make a big impact very quickly.
So how do you guys feel about color on resumes? Or like, I know pictures are generally like frowned upon.
I like color if it helps to break the sections up and just make it a little easier to look at.
Yeah, and I would say leave your headshot for LinkedIn. It just takes up space on the sheet, which isn't relevant, right? You want to talk about your abilities, your experience. Your photo isn't relevant, as well as your address. I cringe when I see people have their home address on their resumes for two reasons: safety and privacy. So don't do that.
And sometimes the address, if it's somewhere far from where you're located, it raises a question of, are they willing to get here? Right. Is it going to be a problem? And you don't even want that in the consideration set.
Yeah.
Arvind, I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know that I had to turn my video off because I'm getting a bit of buffering. So I apologize to the group.
Okay, that's all right. Totally understandable in today's world. So another thing, actually, before we move on from applications, I do want to know how thoroughly you guys tend to check out like cover letters, because there's so much information online where it's like, sometimes like I see like articles where it's like people don't really read the cover letters. And then other times I'm like, no, the cover letters are where you actually stand out. So it gets really confusing to know like how important that cover letter really is.
I mean, for us, when we posted the internship, we actually said, and it was part of the test to see how much people were paying attention, skip the cover letter and tell us in a tweet why you want this job. And
clever, Sheri. I like that.
But there may have been maybe 2% that actually saw that and then figured out how to do it. But we were trying to, I didn't want to read that. I wanted to actually see, and it's part of that notion of, can you write, and can you write succinctly? Can you get it into a tweet to tell me why you want this role?
That's actually really cool. That's a great way. I know I saw a couple of job descriptions where they'd be like, work the word cookie into your cover letter. And like, so many people wouldn't do it because they don't read the instructions properly. But it really is important, I guess, like to really keep an eye on for those details, because right now there's so much supply and talent that employers are looking for an easy way to cut people off their lists.
So, I think if I can add cover.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Sheri.
No, I was just going to say, we're trying
cover
to find
letters are actually
people.
Probably important for us. Yeah. So on our side, if I have 500 resumes, but I can't tell enough about a person in 7.4 seconds, I'd like to go to a cover letter just to give them a second look, just in case there's something that I just didn't pick up in a cover letter. So it just gives me a second glance if I need to.
Okay. I would agree with that. I like to see cover letter, but short and sweet, not a full on like multiple paragraphs, couple paragraphs, why we should consider hiring you, what value you can add to the business. And then I'd move on to your resume.
But if you do include a cover letter, make sure that you've customized it for the company, because I've had a lot that were different company names and different hiring names and different titles in it. And that
wrong job.
You're out of the mix. Like, you completely get knocked out. That and typos and resumes, I don't have a lot of patience for, because I think we work in an industry where typos are our nemesis, and we should be able to locate those things. I think the biggest one for me is that people get really nervous and you don't get to see their personality. And for me, the culture within my team is very much work hard, play hard, and we try not to take ourselves too seriously. We joke on the regular that, we sell pop and chips. We're not saving lives. We need to have fun and enjoy what we do. We have demanding responsibilities, but we have to be able to enjoy each other and our days. So fit for us is really important. Skills are critical, but fit is even more so critical. And I think sometimes people's nervousness takes over, and if you're too formal, it's not a great fit for us. So trying to find that way to overcome your nerves and show who you really are and show what you're passionate about is, for me, really important.
I would say, you just want to be yourself. Walk in confident, your stuff, the job you're applying for, be prepared to do your homework, research the company, research the people that you're meeting with. So you are comfortable, and that'll reduce some of that nervousness you might be feeling. I will add the last piece. I don't want to forget this. It's super important. After you walk out of that interview, send a thank you email to everybody that you've met with. I can't tell you how many people don't do that. And it can really make or break your opportunity, because you'll stand out.
I was actually going to ask about the thank you notes. So one of the things I noticed when I was applying for jobs is sometimes it's set up all through the recruiter, and you don't actually have the interviewer's actual emails. I've still sent thank you notes through the recruiter to just be like, thank you for inviting me in for an interview. I really enjoyed talking to so-and-so. Please pass on my thanks to them as well. Because I thought it would be obviously I could probably find them on LinkedIn, but personally, I feel like it might be a little bit creepy or come off pushy if I'm connecting with them on LinkedIn and in the middle of an interview process. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I think that's a smart thing to do, actually, Arvind. That recruiter will always pass the thank you along. Yeah. So I think that's a pretty smart way to handle it.
Mm-hmm. I've had people who left hard copy cards, and they must have written it before the interview, but they left it with the receptionist, and then I got it later in the day. But no one does hard copy anything anymore. So those things were always memorable.
Maybe it's you. I don't know about you, Sheri, but I usually sit in on second interviews. So just like you, we talk about fit. So, some of my staff will do the first, and I always like to meet whoever joins our team. And I just do a bit of a check-in. And of the last ones I've done, I think only one actually sent a thank you. which was really surprising to me. Like it wouldn't have cost them anything just to send a quick thank you through the recruiter, but they didn't. So no, I don't know if that's a sign or people don't think it's important, but I think it's still important.
I would also say, I know I mentioned, and we've all talked a little bit about let us see your personality and be confident. I would say be careful though that you don't come in as overconfident and too comfortable. We did have a person who stands out in my mind because I had never seen it before. But their posture during the interview, they had their arm over the back of the chair and they were kind of sitting like we were having a chat, and it was very conversational, like we were having a coffee and hanging out, but it was not the right tone for an interview situation. And I think for us working in roles where we're dealing with executives all the time, and oftentimes anyone in my team can be dealing with any senior person in our business at any time, I'm always looking at someone through the lens of, could I send them off on their own and trust them that they're not going to embarrass the team or me? So I think finding that balance between who you are, but you still have that presence and executive maturity that you can handle yourself in those situations, I think is really important.
I like to go by the rule, you're better to be overdressed than under. And when we're virtual, you can wear your sweatpants, but definitely dressed, nice blouse or shirt. For communications company I work for, I don't think people wear suits anymore, even when we were in the office. So that's a little bit too dressed. But I mean, if you're fully dressed up, that gets you in the right headspace as well at that professional level that we're looking for, and it will come across in the video.
And is there anything else that like you need to take into consideration, like especially for like virtual interviews?
I would say, you go.
Oh, thanks, Sheri. I think one of the things, because of the technology now, I always am impressed when people can recover and have taken the time to look at the dial-in numbers and know their way around technology. It's a year now, so people really need to do that and come in and out quickly because stuff happens, right? So are you prepared if something goes down, as opposed to saying, well, my technologies just went out. Well, can you call in? Is there a backup? What have you done to do that? So I think that's just probably more important now than ever before.
And I was going to say that too. Make sure your tech works. Make sure your internet is good. If it's not, go somewhere that it will be, because you've got lots of time to prepare. And to Ivana's point, things happen. Have a backup plan. So if you need to connect from your phone or go sit in your car, or do something somewhere, just make sure you've got that connectivity available. And I would say, I like the idea that people dress up. I think I may have done an interview. I just hired 2 people in translation in the last couple of weeks. And I have a feeling that I was in a hoodie for one of the interviews because I wasn't thinking about it when I got dressed, and I've been working from home for a year. So it wasn't, my end wasn't on my priority list, but I appreciated that there were jackets worn and that they looked prepared. And I would say, you're at home. Lots of people are living at home with other people. I have a background on for a reason, because my children love to do cameos when I'm on Zoom. So this prevents them. But one of the people who we actually ended up hiring, her poor cat decided to jump on a shelf behind her, and he was standing on her shoulder and just like headbutting her. And she didn't miss a beat. It was fine. And I didn't care. But just know stuff's going to happen. And for the most part, interviewers don't care. Things happen when you're home. So try to prevent those things if you can. Close the door, tell everyone to leave you alone for the hour. But again, things happen. Don't sweat it.
I think one of the things, if I can add, Sheri, I also think you have to look at the culture of the organization that you're joining. Mm-hmm. And so if it's government, in some cases we are a little bit more formal. If it's a council meeting and you're sitting and I'm on a panel, you talk about technology, I want that to work because I'm on a panel with councillors and the mayor. So you want that to work. You want to be dressed like they are, for sure. Professionally, it's being recorded. It's a public recording as well. So these are all factors that you want to take into consideration versus, I'm having a meeting with my team. I can be less formal. So I think knowing the culture also is really important.
And be conscious of your background. I'm on calls regularly with people at work where it looks like they rolled out of bed and their bed's not made yet. So turn the camera, use a background, like do something, but just be conscious that what's behind you, it could either become a distraction or it could be something that just is nothing, but you don't want, and you don't need to adjust your camera. It's okay. I saw someone moving there. I think it's more just, you don't want their eye drawing to things that, you don't want them forming an impression about you.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one question I will often ask new grads about. Tell me about your work in group work. Collaboration is huge in communications, and the best work comes out of teamwork and the collaboration that's done. So we want to know you're a good collaborator. Do you take charge? In what role do you take in those teams? Are you comfortable leading projects? So project management skills, organizational skills, time management, all of those hard skills are super important, but also just as important are your soft skills, which they don't necessarily teach at school. So are you a good listener? And are you a good communicator in terms of listening and speaking? Your tone of voice? Do you have empathy? Are you curious? That's a big thing in our business. Are you curious, and do you like data? We make a lot of decisions based on data. Yeah, I think that sums up my answer.
So that's quite a bit, actually. And I'm just wondering, like, this is where we get confused. How do you share, like, we have the skill sets, like there's a lot of talented people that are new to the field. It's just, it gets very difficult trying to summarize that on paper. So like, how do you effectively show those skills that you have them on paper?
I think where you can show results in the work that you've done in your project work in school, or even your part-time work. I think, Ivana, you said you had a part-time job as a lifesaver, or were you?
Oh, no, I said that's, we look for that. Some people start off as lifeguards or.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, think about all the volunteer work, the community work that you're involved in. If you can relate that back to your time management skills, and that just, it puts two together, your time management and working with the community. If you can tie all that together, I think that's super important. And I'm not sure if that's really answering your question, Ivana, if you want to add to that.
Maybe I could talk a little bit about skills. I agree, Joanne, you've got some great points. I'll tell you, one of the big things I look for is your customer service attitude. We're in the public service. That's what we do. So, and how do we find it out? We try and ask questions if you get to the interview stage, around scenarios where that can really shine, because the worst thing we can have is somebody who comes on board and doesn't appreciate that. When you get a call from whoever it is, whether it's the public, member of council, our own team members, you're going to just deal with that ASAP, the best of your ability. You're not going to pass the buck. You're going to just show up and just get the job done. So that's one of the most important. And we're looking, and I look at Sheri and Joanne, we're trying to find that litmus test for customer service, because it's not so easy to test for that, is it? I think the schools are great. I think you guys would all, the group here would come to the table for sure with the great skills, and maybe there's things that we can work on. But if you don't come to the table with customer service attitude, I can't really teach that. You've got to have it in you, and then it's got to be magnified when you come on board.
I often think or feel that people that come from the service industry, like restaurants, servers know how to hustle. They know how to problem solve very quickly. They're dealing with real life people and issues that you need to resolve quickly, and to get that customer satisfaction. So I do like to see that on resumes too, under former work experience.
So is the position enough, or like, should they be putting for example, stats of some sort if they've reached like a certain level of like customer satisfaction, or if like in their cover letter, maybe sharing like a particular example where they dealt with a problem at work?
Yep. So you're showing results there. Yeah. If you won awards, customer service, any type of award that you've won, That's important it's your bragging rights that should be on your resume.
I like to hear examples, Joanne, of people when we interview them. I'll give you a great one. This wasn't a PR job, but it was an assistant job. And we asked what was her great example of customer service. Well, she was a server, and the chef didn't show up for a party of 20, and she got in the kitchen and actually cooked for this party of 20. I mean, talk about problem solving, right? She really knew that it was that important to get up and just get the job done. So there's ways to actually showcase it in both your resume or, if you get to the interview stage, I think.
Yeah, I would say attitude. I mean, skills are one thing and you can show it through examples. And I think, when you've got either volunteer or work experience, and I think I mentioned it earlier, how you explain what you do and how you put it into terms that tie to, I've done these things in customer service or problem solving, or help us connect the dots back to the profession and how you've learned things or done things in that role that you could pull through into a communications role. I would say for me, attitude, it's all about being hungry but humble. So you want to learn, you want experiences, you want opportunities, you are willing to do whatever it is. Coming in with attitude, and you'd be surprised at how many people have a bit of an ego over, well, I have a degree or I have a master's and I have this thing and therefore I should be doing X, Y, and Z off the bat. That's not the case. And depending where you start, if it's an agency, which is where I started, you're at the bottom, and there's things that you do because you're learning how to do the job. And as you progress, you eventually manage those people. So someone who's willing to roll up their sleeves and do quite literally anything that the team needs is huge, because oftentimes you just need a set of hands to do something. And to Ivana's point, I still take calls from consumers who can't figure out that the phone number is on the back of the bag. So they find my cell phone and they call me about the most random things, but I can't be rude to them. So any one of us could be the face of the company to anyone at any given time. So knowing again that those people are just willing to get in there and problem solve is so huge, especially in these entry-level roles. We just need people who are willing to be scrappy and help.
I think I'm going to just use what Joanne said about the data-driven decisions. I think the skill set is one thing, but if you could really use and understand what it means to tell a story using data and sell an idea using data, you are going to be really well positioned in this new world. I'm in business planning right now, and I have 7 business cases I'm trying to pitch, and my team is trying to put together all the facts. So as somebody coming in, if you have a really great idea, that's wonderful, but can you frame it up? And can you use data to help sell it and position it? You may not always win, but I think that's one of the things I'm seeing now more and more. I've been in this business a little bit too long. I'm not a native user of all the social media that you folks are. So you are way ahead of the game. If you can show that and bridge that to people who aren't native, that's the other piece. I always say, not everybody is the same generation or the same background. And if you can really help bridge that, I think, Sheri, you mentioned it, help connect the dots for a senior executive or somebody in the field, somebody outside, working in parks, and you're telling them about social media and why it's important to take a photograph of them, cleaning the park so that you can use it and tell their story. That is really, really powerful. So it's not just about the technology. It's about taking that, using it, and really being able to tell your story.
And being able to write a written story, because I think being able to craft that story and have that vision of, we're trying to do this thing as a company and we have these different examples. And if the audience is employees, here's why it's important to you. Here's the role you can play, and really weaving that together into something that's really interesting and compelling. But writing is the showstopper. If you can't write, then I'm not sure how far you'll get at all. I mean, I spend, I don't know how much, 60 to 70% of my day when I'm not in meetings writing. And it's something that for entry-level roles, there's a ton of writing, and it's something that you need to just embrace and enjoy and find a way to love it. Because if you don't love it, it will become something that will be very challenging for you in your career.
I'm going to add one little point, because that's a great point. I think writing is a non-starter, right? If you don't have the writing skill. In my case, we did a bit of an audit about the kind of writing that we were doing at a government level, and it was like grade 23. Is there even such a thing, right? So the idea to write in plain language is really important. So it's succinctly, it's taking the jargon out. And I think I totally agree with Sheri. I think I would add one thing. If you're not a great writer, take lots of courses and write for people, get critiqued, get feedback, really hone your skills. Because I think you can get there. I mean, if it's not really what you like to do, that's a totally different thing and you're not going to work at it. But if you work at it, we've had people who were great PR people and, great ideas, events and all the rest, but the writing, we hooked them up with a writing coach and, that just really helped elevate their writing skills. So I think there's just ways to get you there.
I would say your priority should be about learning about the business and the different business units within that. So we've got our innovation and creativity hub, we've got our business development, we've got our data and analytics, and those are all part of onboarding for new hires. So it's really important to learn the priorities of the business, the vision of the business, and the priorities within your team as well. So you're not cycling on work that doesn't necessarily need to be done. Mind you, at that entry level, you're going to be, a lot of the work's going to be directed to you anyways, but I think it's important to understand all of that. I will just add one little piece. While you don't have to have a degree in finance or be a CA or by any means, but as you progress up the ladder in your career, you are going to want to be able to speak the language of finance with the CFOs, the director of finance. If you can speak that language, that's only going to help you in your career.
Maybe I'll just jump in because it just reminds me, I know how difficult it is to find a job. So when I graduated many years ago, we were in a recession. So my first five years of work were on contract. So my advice to all of you is contracts are a great thing. Mm-hmm. Contracts allow you to experiment in different jobs, really test the water out, whether you want to be in PR, marketing, digital, events. It really gives you an opportunity to network as well. So one job can be connected to another job, to have lots of patience, and to also build up your resume through those volunteer opportunities when it's a little bit tough, because volunteer opportunities are still relevant. In fact, I would say just as relevant as work experience, if you can tie it together, if you could tell the story, as Sheri said earlier, just to bridge what the skill set was and how it allowed you to do anything. So for me, I would say that's my big advice, to really not discount, and I'm going to say not discount government, because the challenge we're having right now is we probably can't compete with maybe some of our corporate partners and some of the starting salaries, but we have a great place. And we're fairly large. And maybe if you start in one area, you might be able to move into different areas. So that's our recent challenge, by the way. It's just our last recent competitions. I don't know what it's been. Maybe it's the level. It hasn't been junior people, but we haven't been able to attract people that we can hire. They just say, you know what, somebody else has given me another job offer. So we haven't been able to finish it through. So that's my advice.
My advice would be, don't be afraid of agency. A lot of people have this perception, and it's unfortunate because I think there's a lot of professors in the programs who are, let's say, dissing agency and the experience that comes with it. I spent the first 7 years of my career in agency and learned more in that time than I ever could have in any other role, and had the opportunity to work with so many smart people in different industries and different clients and really find my home and where I wanted to be and the types of work that I wanted to do. And there are a lot more opportunities in agencies than there are in corporate. I have a team of 6, but 2 of them are translators. One of them is a graphic designer. One is an intern, and one is a mid-level comms person. I have no room. And we're not, Ivana, I know you made a comment about salary. I would hazard a guess that we're probably not that far off. I think there's this perception that corporate is high paying and cushy and agency is a sweatshop. I would argue, though, maybe the salaries don't shake out exactly the same from the get-go, but the income potential is significantly higher on the agency side, and your learning potential is much higher. You've got a very clear path, whereas in corporate, you're getting tossed into a team where your onboarding may not be as clear as the 30/60. It may just be, hey, we've got these 5 projects and we're tossing you in the middle, which can be challenging environment to learn in. So if you really want that structure and that really clear progression of what does my next job look like, and here's the responsibilities and what do I need to do to get promoted, agency is a great place to do that because it's so well structured. I know I'm sending you away from me and over to Joanne, but I'm a huge proponent of agency.
Thank you, Sheri. I agree. Like, yes, I've heard of other agencies that are called sweatshops, that they have reputations, but the experience you get out of it is just amazing. And it can really help elevate your career very quickly because there's so much moving parts in it. So thanks for the plug, Sheri.
You're welcome. But if it has a bad rep, there may be a reason why. So not all
do your research. Cool. Yeah.
Yes, do your research.
Yeah.
So firstly, I just want to thank the panel for being here and putting time aside to answer our questions. I have 2, if that's okay. I'm wondering how much weight is placed on the salary expectation aspect of the application, and how can I optimize my response to answering salary expectations?
I don't know that we ever have had a salary conversation as part of the process. I've never had anyone for an entry-level role lay out their salary expectations.
So we're the opposite. We actually have to lay it out. So it's actually part of the posting. So it's actually a part of the public that's posted. And so I would say it's important that that's the salary, and we don't have any flexibility to go beyond that. So I think that's important for us, just because we're the public sector, and it's whatever the range is, whatever that salary range is, we can't go above that. So I think it's important not to, and maybe again, what people think that, well, that's just what they're posting, they could go up in that case, and we just can't.
Perfect. If I may ask my second question, as questions an interviewee asks reflect, I think, a lot about their character, professional values. Is there any particular question you have been asked as an interviewer that has stood out to you?
I would say the thoughtful ones around what impact you want the role to have, where they're clearly probing a little bit deeper. I think people love to ask the difficult questions too about the company and depending where you work and any sort of reputational issues that you're facing. I think probing in some of that, just to understand, as framing it as eagerness versus you're putting the interviewer on the spot and it's becoming uncomfortable. I think asking smart questions is always really important. If you can find that nugget, even if it's something that ties back to, hey, I saw this article in the news today about your company or about your industry, and what does this mean? So it shows that you're following the news, the media, public trends, things like that, and being able to apply it back to the situation that you're interviewing for. It just, again, it shows that you're connecting the dots and that you're paying attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Sophia to unmute herself, and she has a couple of really great questions.
Hi. As Rachna did before, I want to thank all the panelists for taking the time to speak with us. I think it's really important that we get this information, especially as we're applying for jobs and internships. So my first question was about, I suppose like diversity and equity and inclusion. So should somebody disclose whether they're BIPOC or LGBT or both? And does that actually affect whether somebody gets picked for the first interview?
What a great question, Sophia. I don't know. Sorry, I'm trying to put myself on the application end of things. And I don't even know if that question exists on our forms and how it's presented. So you raise a really good question. I'm going to have to take that back. I don't know that we ask.
We don't ask at the interview, at the initial stage. Once we hire someone, we ask for that data. It is all voluntary though.
Yeah, Yeah, it's not something we collect. I think legally you can't mandate it in Canada. You
Right.
can do it as voluntary. We're in the midst right now of doing a company-wide census because we don't have the data, because it's not something that we've been able to navigate in terms of voluntary versus required. And obviously, if you're collecting it, you want to have some integrity so you can draw some insights out of it. So I'm not sure that it's come up, but I'm sure we all have hiring practices and policies where we're really looking to hire diverse candidates. And I think that's where, for me, I try not to look at names. We don't want headshots. We're really trying to look at the person and their experiences. And most of the time, I know nothing about them until they walk into the interview. And I prefer that.
One of the things my team and I do once we're in the interview stage with a number of candidates, if we're testing them, we'll take their names off the test and give them back to the managers, so they can't. If there's a name of a certain background, like it won't sway their decision. So we're doing what we can with that. Our industry recognizes that. I think we all recognize there's a lot of work to be done around hiring and diversity. And it certainly cannot be just check off the box that you've hired so many people from a certain ethnic background. So there's a lot of awareness around that. Sophia, that's a really great question and totally valid for asking. I certainly wouldn't discount candidates based on where they're from or, their name, or we really have to look at what's in the resume and as it's related to the job.
Thank you so much. I just have one more quicker question. If you don't, let's say you're an applicant and you don't get selected for the role, is it okay to follow up and ask for feedback on the interview, or is that inappropriate?
I would ask, absolutely. Oftentimes it's a matter of, two candidates. And one had something stood out. Maybe they gave a thank you email afterwards. I've seen that happen. But if you can get that feedback, it will certainly help you in the next round.
I would also just offer, and I thought a bit earlier with one of the other questions, and it's sort of related. If you don't get an interview, don't take it that personally, because I can tell you, oftentimes we narrow it to the top 20 resumes. You've got to start somewhere, and you tend to interview in groups of 5. Mm-hmm. So you start and then you work through the 5. And did you like someone? Yes. You may not even get to the next 5 or the next 5. So it could just be luck of the draw of, we had a pile that we narrowed it to, and here's how we decided to break them apart. Sometimes you can organize them based on sort of your interest in the candidates, but again, just because of the volume, don't take it personally. It's just that there's so much right now that it's difficult to break through.
If I can just jump on that as well, as we talked earlier, if we have a posting and, it's so typical for us to get 500, 600, our postings only stay up for a week. Mm-hmm. So by the time you're thinking about it, I might even pull it because I've got already 800 applicants. So don't wait. If you see something, I would say be ready, have your resumes polished, make sure you know where you want to go, because in our case, things don't stay up very long. So you want to be able to turn on that fairly quickly.
Thanks so much for your time, guys. Thank you.
And just before there's just one more question I think is just really great and applicable. I just want to make sure with all the panelists, I might run just the 5 minutes longer. So I might finish around 8:05 before I invite this person to speak. I hope that's okay. Is everyone okay?
Yeah, no problem.
So the last person I'll invite to speak, and I'm so sorry if we didn't get to your questions, but I'm going to invite Brolin to unmute herself, and she has a great question to ask.
Hi. So as mentioned before, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to talk with us. It's all been really insightful and very useful, especially. I also volunteer for PR Ramp. I am the operations manager. So if you get any emails, it's usually from me. But my question is, as I've been applying through this process, I've noticed that in the application, it does put a qualification and requirement for 3 to 5 years experience, especially for an entry-level job. And I just wanted to get your sense on, is it necessary? And what would you think a 3 to 5 years experience would necessarily mean? Especially, does that mean skill sets, other things that's per se job experience, but like school work experience. I'd like to get your take on it.
I don't know that 3 to 5 years is an entry level position. So that makes me a bit, that makes me wonder, were you thinking that too? I think we would look for under 2 years as entry level. And I think that would be fair. And so 3 to 5 just sounds a bit too much. And you're going to get people, not only 3 to 5, you probably get people 5 to 7, because then there's people. So now if you're on the other side, you may not even get to it because you've got a whole bunch of people ahead of you. So I'm just thinking about that question because it seems a bit odd that people would say 3 to 5. I don't know, Sheri, what do you think?
I would say if it's a 3 to 5, they mean it. So I would say if you're truly open to someone out of school, you're probably saying that you need a degree, maybe some volunteer or school experience. I think the challenge with going after a 3 to 5 is they're expecting someone who can hit the ground running and know what they're doing with not very much instruction or coaching. There's still obviously support there, but the expectations would be so significantly higher for that experience. I would see that as almost a not mid-level, but more junior position versus an internship, a co-op, those sorts of things.
Yeah, that does seem a little odd. When we're hiring entry level, we want to see that you've had at least an internship in a PR role, a communications role. And often our strategy is that we will hire interns with the hope and expectation that we can convert them to a permanent hire.
Because of the pandemic, so many people with a couple of years of experience are kind of starting to hit that like 3 to 4 year experience level have been laid off, and they are now applying for those positions that are like entry level, because they're willing to work for less pay than not work at all. So, which makes sense, because it makes sense for organizations to want somebody that's willing to work for less, that has experience, to be able to do the work right away. But do you think companies kind of have a cap for that? Like, for example, internships or those positions that are doable for somebody with 1 year of experience? Or would, from the organization's point, would you still consider those people with more experience for those entry level roles?
I think the challenge with overhiring is the role, and depending on what your plan is as the manager for the growth of that role, if you're looking for someone to come in that role and be in there for a while, if you overhire, their aspirations are going to be a lot higher than what they're doing in that role. And eventually they're going to get frustrated and potentially leave, or just, not be happy in the position that they're in. And I think I personally wouldn't overhire for that type of job, just knowing, or you'd have to be really clear with the candidate of, listen, I know you've got more experience. This is the job. And this is what the next couple years look like if it's a permanent role, to make sure that they're really clear as to what they're signing themselves up for, because you don't want it to come back later that, well, but I thought that I was going to get promoted and I thought it was going to progress to this and I'm capable of so much more. Well, but you took this job and these are the responsibilities and this is the core of what I need you to focus on.
Okay.
So I don't know that necessarily in a company's best interest to do that. I feel like satisfaction would struggle.
Yeah. We put so much time and effort into onboarding a new hire. We want to make sure we're getting the right person in the right role, in the right level. Mm-hmm. We've told people they're overqualified, but stay in touch because we're hiring. So just a shout out, Nationals hiring, H&K's hiring. There's a lot of work coming. We've got a lot of RFPs on the table as well. So it's exciting time to be in public relations and communications.
So and I just want to be really transparent with the group. So we've just come out of a pandemic. So we've been through a hiring freeze. So some of our positions have been frozen. So we used to have an internship that we just haven't been able to resurrect. We hope so. We hope things will turn around, but be flexible in what you're looking for. So if it's not in our area, maybe the transit folks might be looking for a marketing PR person. So there's ways to look not just in corporate, maybe across the other units in marketing and recreation would be looking, or culture, or you want to be ambassador. I think, Sheri, you were talking about, ambassador programs. These are all, again, skills where you could use, and if you really wanted to get your foot in the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important, if that's what you want to do, at least try it out. Just get your foot in the door.